Poverty might be contagious. I don't want my children sitting next to someone from a broken home and getting ideas. My sister Lauren announced at our mother's birthday dinner, physically steering her 3 kids away from the seat where my 8-year-old daughter Lily had just sat down. Sophia, Madison, Connor, you're sitting over here with the family. The other table is 4. She paused, searching for a word cruel enough to satisfy her. Guests. I watched my daughter's face crumple as she was forced to move to a small card table in the corner, alone among 30 relatives who all pretended not to notice, and something inside me that had been bending for years finally snapped clean in half. What Lauren didn't know, what she'd conveniently forgotten in her campaign to humiliate me, was that I'd spent the past 6 months quietly documenting her financial implosion, and the sister who'd just called me poor was about 3 weeks away from losing everything. The family dynamics had been poisonous for years. Lauren was the golden child, older by 3 years, conventionally successful, married to a lawyer named Gregory who wore his wealth like a costume. They lived in a McMansion in the suburbs, drove luxury cars, sent their children to private schools, and never missed an opportunity to remind everyone how well they were doing. I was the family disappointment. I'd married for love instead of status, to a man named Daniel who worked construction. We'd bought a modest house, lived within our means, and raised Lily with values rather than valuables. When Daniel died 2 years ago, a workplace accident that had left me a widow at 34, Lauren's sympathy had lasted approximately 1 week before she'd started making comments about my situation. Must be hard, raising a child alone. I suppose you'll have to sell the house now. You could always move back in with Mom. Not that there's any shame in that. Every family gathering became a performance of her superiority and my inadequacy. She'd arrive with shopping bags from designers I couldn't pronounce. Her children would show off new electronics while Lily clutched the second-hand tablet that was her prized possession. Gregory would hold court about investments and vacation properties while I nursed a single glass of wine and tried to disappear. But the birthday dinner was different. Lily sitting alone, physically segregated from her own cousins, publicly labeled as contaminated. That was a line I couldn't let stand. I walked over to the kids' table where Lauren's children sat, their faces uncertain. Who wants to see Aunt Lauren's house? I asked brightly. Oh wait, the bank owns it now. Maybe we can schedule a tour during the foreclosure auction. The room went silent. Lauren's face drained of color. What are you talking about? I'm talking about the notice of default that was filed 3 weeks ago. The one that became public record when you missed your 6th consecutive mortgage payment. I turned to the other relatives, who were watching with a mixture of horror and fascination. Didn't Lauren tell you? She and Gregory are about to lose the house. The luxury cars are leased and about to be repossessed. The private school tuition hasn't been paid since September. That's enough, my mother said sharply. No, Mom, it's not. Because you didn't say that's enough when Lauren made my daughter sit alone. You didn't say that's enough when she called poverty contagious. You don't get to decide when enough is enough now. The information had come to me accidentally. 3 months ago, I'd run into a former colleague who now worked at the county clerk's office. During our conversation, she'd mentioned seeing the Whitmore name on some interesting documents, foreclosure filings specifically. I'd been curious enough to investigate. What I'd found was a house of cards that had been collapsing for over a year. Gregory had lost his partnership at the law firm. Apparently his billable hours had been fabricated, and he'd been quietly pushed out rather than publicly disgraced. Lauren had been hiding the truth from everyone, maintaining appearances with borrowed money and maxed-out credit cards. The designer bags? Knockoffs. The vacation photos? Taken at a timeshare they'd visited 2 years ago. The children's private school? They'd been asked to withdraw after the tuition account became delinquent. Everything Lauren had been using to humiliate me, her wealth, her status, her superiority, was an illusion built on debt and denial. I'd kept the information to myself, not out of kindness but out of exhaustion. Exposing Lauren wouldn't have changed anything. She'd just find some other way to feel superior. But then she'd made Lily sit alone. Then she'd called my daughter contagious. And suddenly, every reason I'd had for staying silent evaporated. The confrontation at the birthday dinner was just the beginning. Lauren tried to deny everything, claiming I was making up stories out of jealousy. But I'd come prepared, printed documents in my purse, ready for exactly this moment. Here's the notice of default. I handed it to my cousin Margaret. Here's the foreclosure timeline. Here's the court filing from Gregory's departure from his firm. not pursuing new opportunities, as Lauren told everyone, but terminated for cause. The papers circulated around the room while Lauren stood frozen. You had no right. You had no right to segregate my daughter like she carried a disease. You had no right to humiliate a child because her father died and her mother doesn't drive a BMW. But you did it anyway. So I'm just returning the favor. This is family business. So was my financial situation, but you've been discussing it at every gathering for 2 years. You've called me a burden. You've suggested Mom shouldn't help me because I'm not trying hard enough. You've made Lily feel like a second-class citizen in her own family. I stepped closer. The difference is my financial situation is honest. Yours is a lie. My mother pulled me aside an hour later. The party had dissolved into awkward clusters of relatives, everyone processing the revelation. Lauren and Gregory had left abruptly, their children in tow, their carefully constructed facade in ruins. That was cruel, Mom said. Was it? More cruel than making Lily sit alone? More cruel than calling poverty contagious. She's your sister. And Lily is my daughter. When Lauren attacked her, publicly, deliberately, in front of the entire family, she declared war. I didn't start this. I just finished it. There were children present. Lauren's children heard everything. Lily heard Lauren say she shouldn't sit with her cousins because she might contaminate them. Those children are going to learn the truth about their parents' financial situations soon enough. At least now they'll also know that their aunt tried to protect her daughter from cruelty. Mom didn't have a response. You've enabled Lauren for years, I continued. Every time she made a comment about my situation, you changed the subject. Every time she flaunted her fake wealth, you praised her success. You let her believe there were no consequences for cruelty, because there never were. I was trying to keep the peace. You were keeping Lauren comfortable at Lily's expense. That's not peace. That's collaboration. The weeks that followed were complicated. Lauren's financial collapse became impossible to hide. The house went to auction. The cars were repossessed. The family was forced to move into a rental apartment, their children suddenly attending public school with the contaminated children Lauren had looked down upon. I took no pleasure in her suffering, not really. Watching my nieces and nephew lose their home, watching them struggle with the transition from private school to public, watching them learn that everything they'd believed about their family was a lie, none of that was satisfying. But I did take satisfaction in one thing. The cruelty stopped. Lauren had no ammunition left. No McMansion to showcase, no luxury cars to flaunt, no expensive clothes to parade. She was just another woman struggling to get by, just like me. And when we were finally on equal footing, something shifted. The first genuine conversation we'd had in years happened 3 months after the birthday dinner. Lauren showed up at my door unannounced, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Can we talk? I let her in. Made coffee. Waited. I've been thinking about what you said. About Lily. About how I've treated you. She stared into her cup. I don't know when I became so cruel. I look back at the things I said, the things I did, and I don't recognize myself. When did it start? I think it started when you married Daniel. You were so happy, so sure of yourself. You didn't need the things I needed, the status, the appearance, the validation. I was jealous. Of me? You had everything. I had the appearance of everything. Underneath, I was terrified. Gregory was always chasing the next promotion, the next client, the next big win. When that fell apart, I couldn't face it. So I doubled down on pretending. And the more I pretended, the more I resented you for being authentic. So you took it out on my daughter? I took it out on everyone. But Lily was the easiest target because she reminded me of what I'd lost. Innocence, maybe. Contentment. The ability to be happy without needing everyone to see it. I let the silence stretch. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Lauren finally said. I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. What it feels like to lose everything. What it feels like to have people look at you with pity and judgment. I understand. Understanding isn't enough. I know, but it's a start. Rebuilding took time. Lauren and I didn't become close overnight. There was too much damage, too many years of accumulated hurt. But we began to communicate honestly, without the performance of superiority and inadequacy that had defined our relationship. Her children and Lily started spending time together. Real time, without the segregation Lauren had enforced. It turned out they had a lot in common once the artificial barriers were removed. My mother, watching this unexpected thaw, asked me once if I regretted what I'd done at the birthday dinner. No, I said honestly. I regret that it was necessary. I regret that Lauren had to lose everything before she could see what she'd become. But I don't regret defending Lily. I don't regret telling the truth. It could have destroyed your relationship with Lauren permanently. The relationship I had with Lauren wasn't worth preserving. It was built on her contempt and my silence. What we're building now, it's harder, but it's real. Last month, Lauren's daughter Sophia invited Lily to her birthday party. It was a simple affair, pizza and movies in their modest rental apartment, nothing like the elaborate productions Lauren used to throw. But Lily came home glowing, talking about how much fun she'd had with her cousins. Aunt Lauren was nice, she said, surprised. She asked about school and actually listened. People can change, sweetheart. Do you think she changed because of what happened at Grandma's birthday? I thought about the question carefully. I think she changed because she finally had to face who she'd become. Sometimes people need mirrors held up to their behavior before they can see it clearly. Is that why you said those things? To hold up a mirror? I said those things because she hurt you, and I couldn't let that stand. But if it also helped her see herself, then maybe something good came from something painful. Lily sat with her cousins at Thanksgiving this year. No segregation. No comments about contamination. No hierarchies based on wealth that no longer existed. Lauren caught my eye across the room and gave me a small nod, acknowledgement, maybe, or gratitude. I nodded back. We weren't friends. We might never be. But we were sisters again, in a way that felt more honest than anything we'd had before. My sister had refused to let my daughter sit with her kids. She'd called poverty contagious. I'd exposed her crumbling empire in front of everyone. Mom called it cruel. But cruelty was making an 8-year-old eat alone because her father had died. Cruelty was teaching children that some people are lesser because of their bank accounts. Cruelty was building a fake life to look down on people who were living real ones. What I did was just consequences. And sometimes consequences are exactly what people need to become who they should have been all along.